Thank you, Gopalan, and thanks again to all the other speakers. I think you had a wonderful exposition here of a whole variety of things which are needed to be successful entrepreneurs, give you a whole picture of all the issues involved. I'm going to close by giving a few thoughts and ideas on some of the major reasons or important things to be successful as an entrepreneur, and then I'll just give you three which I believe you must avoid. So coming down to these, the first of these is, I'd call it as the soundness of the entry strategy. Now many aspects of that strategy have actually come through the earlier discussions. For example, generating and validating an idea, the value proposition that you create. I'd say that as you go forward, how scalable it is, and even there Rana touched on having a large enough market to address. As you enter the market, do you have the ability to avoid a head-on clash with larger incumbents who are already there? Or even if you do have to, you may choose to take them on. Do remember that even the largest players very often have weaknesses. But then you must be able to identify those weaknesses and be clear how you're going to be able to target and compete against them. And then there's a need in this entry strategy, having got started, all the time looking at the market, continuously innovating, continuously revalidating and changing that strategy. There are very few differentiators which will last forever. In fact, I'd say they all have a shelf life. So you need to continuously keep on building and developing differentiators. I'll come to the second point, which I think is very important, and that is organization building. Again, this has been touched on by many of the speakers in many aspects of it. Rana, as a VC, would have said that, people will fund an idea, but they almost equally and maybe even more importantly fund a team, because nobody is going to just depend on any one individual. So, and of course, then you're going to run the organization. It's not just a question of going out and being able to get the money. And as you go ahead, therefore the importance of organization building. It includes, I'd say, building what I'll call is a well-balanced team. So often entrepreneurial startups come in with people who are excited and about an idea, they've been good friends, and then you get started as founders and realize that to run an organization you need a lot of complementary capabilities, you need different functional capabilities. So you then go out and get professionals and give them their own place in the organization who can fulfill those different specialized roles. It would be very rare that a group of 5 or 6 people just came together and you had both a marketing guy, a finance guy, a people person, and the technology person, and so on and so forth. I think as you build an organization, it's very important that you also give people a sense of a higher purpose for which you're creating this organization. That's when you get excitement. Gopalan talked about the Google example. And I'd say very importantly also, the whole process of entrepreneurial activity is generating wealth. And I'd say that you go to lay schemes for sharing that wealth. I think as you look ahead and give people this purpose, you go to create a shared vision and values, and then run the organization with the highest standards of corporate governance. Then you come down to the issue as a startup, you may or may not even be able to afford the sort of salaries which today the market commands. I'd much rather in those situations take a bright youngster and be able to bet on him or her. But it's important to take your time on those decisions. I can tell you it's far better to be able to have to take a little more time than to make the wrong choice. The opportunity cost of a wrong choice, I think, is at least 5x to 10x times what you would have paid the person before you decide that, look, this is not going to work out. Now, coming down to the third things, I want to just lay down one important principle when you run an organization. I think all of us are familiar in any sort of investment analysis, etc., that we do in the course of our careers on ROI and so on. I believe there's only one criteria as a young company when you do your decision making, and that is to base it on cash flows and not on profitability. Because you've got to be able to maximize your cash and keep it going as long as you can before your next round. There are multiple reasons why I would do that, and because of limitation of time, I'll just stop on this to leave it as a thought that when you got a choice and you look at some decision which looks a little more profitable than the other, but the other one has far better cash flows, the better decision is the one with the cash flow. It's important in anything is to be able to identify your weakest links. I think it's very important to build on your core competencies, but you are as strong as your weakest links. I do want to though add here, a lot of management gurus will tell you that you've got to focus and learn from your failures, and of course you must. But I believe it's equally important to learn from your successes. It is those successes which help you to identify what are your competencies and capabilities, and then those lead to higher growth. I think there's one final thing, and that is that timing is the key. A CEO of a company is like the conductor of a symphony. And actually it's much more complex because the conductor knows what the musical score is and is an expert at that, and he knows exactly what's to follow. And here you're living in a very unpredictable, uncertain world with so many external influences. And timing may sometimes seem like a matter of luck, but you also play a part in making your luck. And I think, for example, why did so many companies collapse when the dot-com bust came? I think they thought that those good times are going to last forever. And sometimes, there's a very strange thing. Some of the most successful companies have started when there were recessions going on. Includes Microsoft. And that's because at that time you don't get carried away with irrational enthusiasm. There's one other positive thing that I do want to highlight, and that is again brought out, I think, over and over again by all the speakers, including the last session from Gopalan, and that is that times have never been better for being successful as an entrepreneur. So you could see even in the funding models, look at the choices available today. And therefore it's a great time for entrepreneurial success. And yet at the same time with all of that, there are hazards galore. I mean, one must not oversimplify it. There's no question, otherwise you would not have such a high failure rate of entrepreneurial ventures. So just 3 or 4 things which I believe you need to avoid. The first, of course, is that business is all about taking risks, but don't take and bet the company on any of those risks. So you take bite-sized risks, you take what risks which are affordable. And even within those, there must be a risk mitigation plan. There must be a well thought out plan B in case things don't shape out the way you expect them to. I think it's very important. We're all doing some things with a view to leading better lives and also becoming better human beings. And I think it's important that we never at any stage use an inappropriate means to achieve an end. And even if you got so-called financial success that way, it couldn't be doctors being successful. And my experience is it catches up sooner or later, and therefore it comes to anybody who's then chosen unethical means to achieve that end will come to a sorry end. And the third thing, I think Venkat touched upon this when he talked about how entrepreneurs experience high highs and low lows. I would sort of paraphrase or amplify that to say, don't get carried away by early success or be despondent with early failures. You'll get failures galore, you'll get little victories galore. And don't begin to think those victories are themselves going to ensure success. But more importantly, don't begin to think of those failures as a full stop. Think of those failures as a path towards success. I do believe that in every opportunity, in every problem, there's an opportunity. And that's what you need to look for when you see a crisis. And with this, I'm quite sure, there seems to be a fairly large number of entrepreneurs here in our audience. I hope you found this, I think we've had an excellent panel of speakers. We've covered a lot of topics. And we'd now like to engage with you with the questions that you have in your mind. If you have practical, real-life problems, there's absolutely nothing like it. Or you may want to get clarifications or amplifications from any of the speakers. Thank you very much.